My name is Arthur Pendleton, and I'm 68 years old. Have you ever reached a point in your life where you feel like a ghost in your own family? It's like being a specter at the holiday table, a blur in the background of family portraits, the person they feel obligated to invite so the neighbors don't gossip. For 15 years, that was my reality. I survived on the scraps of my son's time and attention, while his affluent wife, Veronica, treated me like dirt she'd wipe off the bottom of her expensive heels. But then, on a drizzly November evening, while I was on my way to my son's father-in-law's birthday party, a party where I was certain I'd be relegated to a table with the hired staff, I made a spontaneous choice that altered the course of my life forever. I pulled over to help a stranger whose car had broken down. That one small gesture of decency would end up exposing the decay festering within my family and unearthing secrets that had been buried for decades. This isn't merely a tale of getting even, although there's a fair share of that. It's a story about how a forgotten old man finally came to understand that respect isn't something you're given, it's something you demand. Before I get into the thick of it, please feel free to like and subscribe, but only if this story truly connects with you. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. Now, let me tell you what truly unfolded that night. The email notification chimed at 6 in the morning, just as I was putting on my work apron to head down to my small bookbinding shop. That sound, that sterile electronic ping, sent a knot of anxiety to my stomach before I even laid eyes on the message. Veronica's emails were always sent at the crack of dawn, as if she wanted to sour my day before it had even begun. Father, it started. Not Dad, not Arthur, not even dear Arthur. Just Father, as if I were a formal title and not a living, breathing person. Walter Ashford Sr.'s 75th birthday gala is November 15th at 7 p.m. You are expected to arrive on time and be dressed appropriately. The attire is formal. Kindly confirm you have received this message. I just stared at the screen. Expected appropriately. Even through a simple email, Veronica had a way of making me feel insignificant. My hand shook a little as I put down my phone and glanced around my cramped South Philadelphia apartment. The peeling paint on the walls, the radiator that rattled and hissed through the night, the one window that looked out onto an alley where my neighbors left their garbage. This, right here, was what appropriate looked like for me these days. 3 years. That's how long it had been since they had last invited me to my granddaughter Emily's birthday party. For 3 years, I'd watched her grow up through the polished photos Veronica would post on social media for her high society circle. Emily at her horseback riding lessons. Emily at a fundraiser for her private school. Never Emily with Grandpa Arthur. The phone rang, making me jump. Richard's name lit up the screen. My son, my boy, who used to run to me with scraped knees, calling me the best daddy in the world. Dad. His voice was strained, stretched thin with stress. Did you see Veronica's email? Good morning to you too, son. Dad, come on. This is serious. Walter Sr. I mean, Granddad. There are going to be some very important investors at the party. Sterling Capital. They're thinking about a $500 million development partnership with us. That sounds wonderful for you, Richard. Dad, I just need you to get it. Veronica is under a tremendous amount of pressure. If you could please, just try not to make things awkward for her. Wear something decent. Maybe that gray suit from Cousin Sylvia's wedding. Richard, that suit is 12 years old. It's fine, Dad. It's a classic look. Just, please, do it for me. The pleading in his voice was like a knife in my heart. When did my strong, self-assured son turn into this man who had to beg? When had he started calling his father-in-law granddad while his own father was living in a rundown apartment just a 20-minute drive away? "I'll be there," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "And Dad, maybe don't bring up the bookbinding shop. If someone asks, just tell them you're retired." After he hung up, I sat on the edge of my bed and opened the closet. The gray suit was hanging there, a ghost of a happier time. I took it out, noticing a tiny moth hole near the lapel and the way the fabric had faded from charcoal to a washed-out stone color. But it was the nicest thing I owned. In the back of the closet, tucked behind a pair of dress shoes I no longer had occasion to wear, was a cardboard box with "Theo's Things" written on the side. I hadn't dared to open it in years. Inside was her locket, her wedding ring, and a thick manila envelope filled with old documents from her business partnership with Walter Ashford Sr. back in the 70s. Veronica had inquired about these papers once, claiming she needed them for some tax matter. I told her I couldn't find them. Something about the avarice in her eyes had made me lie. I picked up Theo's locket, remembering her gentle hands, how she had built her auto repair business from the ground up, how she championed honest work and treating people with basic decency. "Never let them make you feel small, Artie," she would always tell me. "You are worth more than all their money put together." But Theodora had been gone for 15 years, and somewhere in that lonely stretch of time, I had forgotten her words. I had let them shrink me. I had started accepting the meager crumbs they offered me. The half-hearted invitations, the separate seating, the palpable embarrassment in the air whenever their society friends inquired about Richard's father. I hung the gray suit on the back of the bathroom door and traced the worn fabric with my fingers. Tomorrow I'd take it to the dry cleaners and hope they could perform some kind of miracle. I would spend money I didn't really have to look appropriate for a group of people who had already made up their minds that I would never be one of them. Looking back, I should have just deleted that email. I should have spent November 15th at home, watching an old movie with a hot cup of tea. But some part of me, maybe it was Theo's voice echoing in my memory, or maybe it was just a stubborn sliver of hope, made me decide to go. I had no inkling that a higher power had something else entirely in store for me that night. Plans that began with a stalled Mercedes on the side of Highway 9. By 4:00 p.m. on November 15th, the sky had taken on the color of tarnished silver, and a cold rain had begun to slick my windshield. My old sedan, purchased used in 2010 and seemingly held together by hope and sheer willpower, groaned as I merged onto the highway. The gray suit was in a plastic dry cleaning bag in the back seat. $40 I couldn't really spare had made it look almost presentable. I had left my apartment early, giving myself an extra hour to get to the prestigious Rittenhouse Square neighborhood. Veronica would find some fault with me no matter what, but I was determined not to give her the satisfaction of calling me late. The radio was playing classic rock, and I was quietly humming along, trying to soothe my frayed nerves. That's when I saw it. About 2 miles past the Brookfield exit, a black Mercedes was parked on the shoulder, its emergency lights flashing rhythmically. A wisp of smoke was curling up from under the hood, and a woman was standing next to it, holding a cell phone to her ear, her expensive-looking suit getting drenched by the rain. She was young, perhaps in her late 30s, and carried herself with an air of confidence that bespoke real wealth, not the kind of desperate performative wealth Veronica was always trying to project. I should have just kept driving. Every minute I spent stopped on the side of the road would be another demerit in Veronica's mental account book. But something about the woman's exasperated posture, the way she kept glancing at her phone's dark screen, reminded me of myself on the day Theo passed away. Stuck at the hospital, with no way to get home, completely invisible to the throngs of people hurrying past. I pulled my car over. The woman looked up, startled, as I lowered my passenger side window. "Need a hand? My phone just died, and I have no idea what's wrong with this blasted car. I have a crucial meeting at 7. Her voice was crisp and educated. "Pop the hood. I can take a look." She looked at me, this old man in a neatly pressed but clearly out-of-style suit, as if I had just offered to fly her to the moon. "You know anything about cars?" My wife ran an auto shop for 30 years. I managed to learn a thing or two. The rain was coming down harder now as I retrieved Theo's old toolbox from my trunk. I had never found the heart to get rid of it. The Mercedes engine was a marvel of engineering, even while it was smoking and overheated. It took me less than a minute to diagnose the issue: a ruptured radiator hose. "You're not getting very far without a new hose," I told her. "But I can rig up a temporary patch that should get you to a mechanic." "How?" I took out the roll of electrical tape that Theo used to swear was a miracle worker. "This should hold for 20 miles or so if you drive carefully. There's a good garage just off exit 31. They're honest people. They won't try to rip you off just because you're driving a fancy car." As I worked, meticulously wrapping the split in the hose, the woman watched me with an expression of sheer astonishment. "I'm Natasha," she said. "Natasha Sterling." "Arthur Pendleton. A pleasure." "Arthur, why did you pull over?" Everyone else just sped right past. I tightened the final layer of tape, my hands now covered in engine grime. "Because, young lady, I know what it feels like to be stranded with no one willing to help." The repair took about 15 minutes, but by the time I was done, my suit was splattered with motor oil, and my carefully combed hair was plastered to my head by the rain. Natasha took a business card from her purse. It was printed on thick, elegant cardstock. "Please, take this. I owe you a nice dinner, at the very least. Where were you headed? I must have made you terribly late." "Just a family event," I said, tucking the card into my pocket without giving it much of a look. "A birthday party over in Rittenhouse Square." A flicker of recognition crossed her face. "The Ashford estate. You know it? I'm acquainted with the family. Walter Ashford's birthday, isn't it? A major society function." I nodded, trying to wipe the grease from my hands with a crumpled napkin from my glove box. "My son married into the family." "Then it seems we're heading to the same destination. I'm the 7 o'clock meeting." She glanced at my oil-stained suit, then at her watch. "Oh, goodness, you're going to be late because you stopped to help me." "It's all right. They probably expect me to be a disappointment anyway." The words tumbled out of my mouth before I could catch them. Natasha's expression shifted, and a sharp, knowing look entered her eyes. "Follow me," she said. "If anyone gives you any grief about your tardiness, you just tell them you were with me." I wanted to tell her that it wouldn't make a difference, that Veronica would find a reason to punish me regardless. But Natasha was already getting back into her car, and I suddenly realized I had exactly 12 minutes to make what was normally a 20-minute drive. The Ashford estate was perched on Rittenhouse Square like a grand monument to generational wealth, all limestone and leaded glass, with gates that looked like they belonged on a European palace. By the time I arrived, 45 minutes late, my old sedan looked like something a groundskeeper might drive, and even he probably had a nicer model. The security guard at the gate eyed me as if I had mistakenly wandered over from a soup kitchen. "Name?" "Arthur Pendleton. I'm Richard Ashford's father." He scrolled through a list on his tablet, his brow furrowed. "You're not on the VIP list. I have you listed under general admission. You'll need to park in the auxiliary lot." The auxiliary lot was situated behind the service buildings, a quarter-mile trek from the main house. As I parked my car between a large catering van and a landscaping truck, I saw my reflection in the side view mirror. The rain had completely ruined my hair. The oil stains on my suit made it look like I'd been working on an engine, which of course I had. My face had that specific shade of weariness that no amount of splashing water on it could fix. The long walk to the main house felt like a march to my own execution. I could hear the sounds of the party drifting through the air, laughter, the clinking of glasses, a string quartet playing something refined and elegant. 200 of Philadelphia's most elite citizens, and me, looking like I had just crawled out of a sewer. Veronica appeared at the service entrance just as I was about to knock. She was standing there in a stunning white designer gown that likely cost more than I made in a year, with diamonds sparkling at her ears. Her face was a perfect mask of barely contained fury. "What have you done?" she hissed. "You look like a vagrant, an actual vagrant. Do you have any idea who is here tonight? The mayor? The Wentworths? Sterling Capital?" She spoke the last name as if it were a sacred incantation that should mean the world to me. "And you have the audacity to show up looking like someone who stopped to help a person in need." I finished for her. "Don't you dare get clever with me, Arthur. This is precisely why Richard didn't want—" She cut herself off, but I knew exactly how that sentence was supposed to end. Why Richard didn't want me here. She grabbed my arm, her perfectly manicured nails digging into my skin, and yanked me down the service hallway. We passed by kitchen staff who dutifully averted their gaze, their faces showing the practiced indifference of people who had witnessed far too much drama among the wealthy. "You can't be seen looking like this. We'll put you in the corner at the auxiliary staff table." The auxiliary staff? The nannies and the drivers. They have a table in the back. You'll blend right in. We stepped out into the main ballroom, and for a fleeting moment, I forgot my own humiliation. The room was breathtaking. Crystal chandeliers dripped from the ceiling, gold-leafed moldings gleamed, and tables were draped in fine silk. And there was Richard, my son, standing by the bar in a sharp tuxedo, laughing at something Walter Ashford Sr. was saying. He looked so dapper, so successful, so much like his mother. If Theo had been born into a world of privilege instead of earning her way with her own two hands. His eyes met mine from across the grand room. I saw the brief flash of horror on his face, quickly masked, as he took in my disheveled state. He began to move in my direction, but Veronica's hand on his arm stopped him cold. She whispered something in his ear, and he nodded, turning his attention back to his conversation. That's when I saw her. Emily, my granddaughter, 5 years old and looking like a perfect doll in a pink party dress. She broke away from her nanny and came running toward me, her arms wide open. "Grandpa Arthur! Grandpa Arthur!" For one priceless, perfect moment, I had my arms full of my granddaughter, inhaling her sweet little girl's scent of strawberry shampoo and pure innocence. "Hello, my precious girl. I've missed you so much. Mommy said you might not be able to come. I will always come for you, my sweet." Veronica materialized at our side like a wrathful spirit. "Emily, darling, let's not bother Grandpa right now. He needs to go and freshen up." "But I want to sit with Grandpa." "Grandpa has his own special seat," Veronica said, her smile as sharp as a shard of glass. "Now, go on back to Melinda." Emily was led away, looking over her shoulder at me, with eyes full of confusion. Veronica then steered me to a small table in the farthest corner of the room, partially concealed by a large potted palm. 3 nannies and 2 chauffeurs were seated there, all looking a bit awkward in their formal attire. "Enjoy the party?" Veronica said, her voice dripping with honey-laced venom. "Try not to call any attention to yourself." As she glided away, I sank into my chair, feeling the weight of every single one of my 68 years. Through the fronds of the palm, I could see the main table where Walter Ashford Sr. was holding court, where Richard and Veronica were playing the role of the perfect couple, and where my granddaughter sat like a little princess. And I sat there with the hired help, once again invisible, wondering why on earth I had ever believed this night could be any different. The nannies and drivers at my table were kind enough to act as if I belonged there. Martin, the Wentworth's driver, even poured me a glass of water from the pitcher on our table. We clearly didn't merit champagne service. I sat there, a spectator at the real party, happening 40 feet away, separated by a vast ocean of social standing. "First time at one of these events?" asked Melinda, Emily's nanny, a young woman with weary eyes. "No," I said softly. "I'm Richard's father." The table fell silent. They all knew exactly who I was. The grandfather who was never permitted to babysit. The father-in-law, Veronica, constantly complained about to anyone who would listen. Melinda gently touched my hand. It was a small act of solidarity, from one invisible person to another. Walter Ashford Sr. stood up, tapping his champagne flute with a spoon. The entire room quieted down. At 75, he still had a presence that commanded attention. He was silver-haired, with sharp eyes, the kind of man who had never performed a day of physical labor in his life, but considered himself a self-made man because he had turned his father's millions into billions. "Friends, family, esteemed colleagues," he began, his voice projecting effortlessly across the ballroom. "Tonight is not just about celebrating another year of my life. It's about celebrating the future of Ashford Industries." I watched Richard stand next to him, my boy looking so proud, so desperate to please this man who had become more of a father figure to him than the memory of his own mother. "As many of you are aware," Walter continued, "we are on the cusp of our most ambitious project to date, a $500 million development that will redefine the Philadelphia skyline. And tonight, we hope to formally welcome our new partners from Sterling Capital into the Ashford family." A murmur of excitement rippled through the crowd. Sterling Capital. Even I had heard of them. They were the kind of investors that made other wealthy people nervous. "Their representative should be joining us any moment now," Walter said, glancing at his Rolex. "And when she arrives, we will show her the true meaning of Ashford hospitality." Veronica then stood up, looking radiant in her designer gown. "While we wait, I'd like to say a few words about family values. At Ashford Industries, we believe in tradition, in understanding where you come from and who truly belongs at your table." Her eyes flickered toward my corner so quickly that I might have imagined it. "We are selective about who we partner with in business because we are selective about who we are." The crowd applauded politely. I shrank further into my chair, wishing the floor would open up and swallow me whole. Through the palm fronds, I spotted a familiar face. Maxwell Price, one of Theo's old attorneys. He had aged well, still looking distinguished in his 70s. Our eyes met, and he started to walk toward me. But Veronica intercepted him, expertly guiding him toward the bar. "Your daughter-in-law is quite something," Martin muttered beside me. "She's very protective of her family," I said, the reflexive defense tasting like ash in my mouth. "Is that what you call it?" Before I could respond, a commotion stirred at the main entrance. The huge double doors swung open, and the entire room seemed to hold its collective breath. Walter Ashford Sr. straightened his tie. Veronica touched the diamonds at her throat. Richard tugged at his cuffs, a nervous habit he'd had since he was a boy, but no one entered. The moment stretched on, becoming awkward and tense. Walter's smile began to look strained. Veronica whispered something to the event coordinator, who then scurried toward the entrance. That's when my mind drifted back to Theo, and the life we had built together before it all came crashing down. She had started with nothing. Just a girl from a working-class neighborhood with grease under her fingernails and a dream in her heart. when she met Walter Ashford Sr. in 1975. They had been equals, two ambitious young people eager to make their mark. Theo had even invested in Walter's first major project, putting up half the initial capital from the sale of her father's house. Whatever happened to those documents? Theo had asked me once, near the end, when the cancer had taken almost everything but her concern for my future. The partnership agreement, Artie, it's important. It's worth something. But after she passed away, grief had consumed me. Richard was in college and needed money for tuition. The medical bills had wiped out our savings. And then Veronica had appeared beautiful, sophisticated, everything I wasn't. She had swept Richard into her orbit so quickly I barely had time to process it. "Dad never talks about Mom," I once overheard Richard telling Veronica. "I think it's just too painful for him." But that wasn't the truth. I didn't talk about Theo because Veronica had made it abundantly clear that an auto mechanic didn't fit into her carefully constructed family narrative. She had rewritten Richard's personal history, erasing the boy who had grown up in his mother's garage, who had known the name of every tool before he could recite the alphabet. A server finally made his way to our table, not with champagne, but with the house salad, wilted greens, and a cheap, watery dressing, while the real guests were being served lobster thermidor. I pushed the lettuce around on my plate, my appetite completely gone. "Grandpa Arthur!" Emily had escaped her nanny again, running toward me with a drawing she'd made with crayons. "I made this for you." It was a picture of two stick figures holding hands, one tall and one small. "It's us," she declared proudly. "It's beautiful, sweetheart." Veronica appeared like a gathering storm cloud. "Emily, I told you." But her scolding was cut short by another disturbance at the entrance. This time, someone did enter, and my heart nearly stopped. It was Natasha Sterling, transformed from the rain-soaked woman on the side of Highway 9 into a figure so commanding that she made even Veronica look plain by comparison. She stood in the doorway, her sharp eyes scanning the room, searching for something, searching for someone. Searching, I realized with a sudden cold dread for me. In that moment, watching Natasha Sterling survey the room, I felt as if I were standing at the edge of a precipice. You know that feeling when you sense your entire life is about to pivot? When you can almost physically feel the ground shifting beneath your feet. That was me, clutching my granddaughter's crayon drawing while my daughter-in-law's perfectly curated world began to fracture. Have you ever been made to feel utterly worthless by your own flesh and blood? Like you are an embarrassment they are forced to endure? If you have, then you will understand why what transpired next felt like a moment of divine intervention. Please, if this story is striking a chord with you, take a moment to like and subscribe. Tell me in the comments, what would you do if you were standing in my shoes? Now, let me tell you what Natasha Sterling did when she finally found me. Natasha Sterling took command of the room without uttering a single word. She was wearing a black designer suit that exuded wealth, her hair elegantly pulled back in a style that looked effortless, but had probably cost a small fortune to achieve. The entire Ashford crowd, a group of people who likely wouldn't notice if their own houses were ablaze, paused their conversations to stare. Walter Ashford Sr. practically jogged across the ballroom, his age seemingly forgotten in the presence of $2 billion worth of investment potential. Veronica glided behind him, having deposited Emily back with her nanny, her smile so brilliant it could have powered the chandeliers. "Miss Sterling," Walter boomed, extending his hand. "We are so deeply honored that you could join us." "Mr. Ashford." Natasha's handshake was firm and brief, all business. "I must apologize for my tardiness. I experienced some car trouble on Highway 9. "Oh, how dreadful," Veronica gushed. I hope it was nothing serious. It could have been. Fortunately, a good Samaritan stopped to help. Natasha's eyes were already moving past them, searching the faces in the crowd. Without him, I would still be stranded in the rain. Well, thank heaven for the kindness of strangers, Walter said, with a dismissive chuckle. Now, allow me to introduce you to our board members. In a moment. Natasha's tone was polite, but unyielding, the voice of someone who was not accustomed to being interrupted. First, I need to properly thank the gentleman who assisted me. I believe he mentioned he was coming here this evening. Veronica's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. Here? To our party? Yes, and Arthur something. Pendleton, I believe. The silence that descended upon the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Walter's face cycled through several expressions: confusion, calculation, and then a forced joviality that was fooling absolutely no one. Arthur. Our Arthur. He said it as if I were a beloved family pet. I didn't realize. He's Richard's father, Veronica said quickly. He's around here somewhere. Here, around here somewhere. Natasha's eyebrow arched just slightly. At your father-in-law's 70th birthday celebration, and you don't know where your own father-in-law is? I should have kept my mouth shut. I should have let Veronica squirm on the hook. But it was at that exact moment that Emily chose to point a small finger directly at me and announce in her clear, high voice, "Grandpa Arthur's over there with the nannies." 200 heads swiveled in my direction. I felt as though a harsh spotlight had just been thrown on me, illuminating every oil stain on my suit, every stray gray hair, and every single year I had been deemed not good enough. Natasha's expression remained impassive, but something in her eyes turned to ice. She began to walk toward me, the sharp clicks of her heels on the marble floor sounding like a ticking clock. Walter and Veronica scrambled to keep up with her, their meticulously planned evening rapidly spiraling out of their control. Mr. Pendleton. Natasha extended her hand to me, completely ignoring the potted palm I was hidden behind, the shabby table, and the clear way the servers had been instructed to treat us like inanimate objects. I was hoping I would find you. I stood up, acutely aware of my appearance, the faint smell of motor oil clinging to me, the way my suit hung improperly after being soaked by the rain. Miss Sterling, did your car make it all right? Perfectly. 20 miles to exit 31, just as you said. The owner of the shop, Mike, I believe, mentioned that you'd sent a number of people his way over the years. Said you never accepted a finder's fee. Good people don't need a fee to help one another. No, she said, her gaze fixed directly on Veronica. They don't. Veronica inserted herself between us, as smooth as a serpent. Father, why don't you go and freshen up? You look a bit weathered. He looks like someone who stopped in a downpour to help a complete stranger, Natasha countered, which is more than I can say for the 3 Mercedes and 2 BMWs that drove right past me without even tapping their brakes. Well, Arthur has always been very hands-on, Veronica said, making the term sound like a chronic illness. He used to work at his wife's auto shop, very blue-collar, salt of the earth, you understand. His wife's auto shop? Natasha tilted her head. You mean Theodora Pendleton of Pendleton Automotive? The name hung in the air. Veronica blinked. You knew her? I know of her. She was one of the original investors in Ashford Industries, wasn't she, Walter? Back in '75, my team pulled the original incorporation records during our due diligence. Walter's face had turned a pasty white. That was a very long time ago. Theodora passed on years ago. 15 years ago, I said softly. Cancer. I'm very sorry for your loss, Natasha said. And somehow, the genuine way she said it made the grief feel fresh again, as if someone actually understood. Her initial investment would be worth a considerable amount today, I would imagine. Theodora was bought out, Walter said quickly, too quickly. Everything was handled by the book. I'm sure it was. Natasha's smile was as sharp as a winter frost. Mr. Pendleton, would you care to join me for a drink? I would love to hear more about your wife. Father really should, Veronica began. I wasn't asking you. Natasha's voice could have frozen boiling water. I was asking Mr. Pendleton, who, I might add, is the only person at this entire party who has shown me an ounce of genuine kindness without having any idea who I was or what I could potentially do for them. She offered me her arm as if I were a visiting dignitary. Shall we? I looked at Veronica's stunned face, at Richard's confused expression, at Walter's barely concealed panic. Then I took Natasha Sterling's arm and allowed her to lead me into the light. Natasha Sterling escorted me to the main bar as if I were a head of state, not an old man in an oil-stained suit who had been sequestered with the staff. The crowd parted for us. Or rather, for her and I caught glimpses of familiar high society faces contorted in confusion. Who was this disheveled old man on the arm of a billionaire? Champagne? Natasha asked me. I wouldn't know the difference between champagne and sparkling cider, I'm afraid, I admitted. Honesty. How refreshing. She ordered 2 glasses of something French that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Tell me about Theodora. She was a good woman, a hard worker, built her business from nothing. And her partnership with Walter Ashford. I paused. We were standing in the man's home, drinking his expensive champagne, surrounded by his guests. But the look in Natasha's eyes told me that she already knew more than she was letting on. They were friends once, just 2 young people with big dreams. Theo put up half the capital for Walter's first development. She sold her father's house to do it. Do you have any documentation of that investment? Some old papers. Veronica asked about them once, but something about it just didn't feel right. Natasha nodded slowly. Your instincts served you well, Mr. Pendleton. Arthur, there's something you need to know about the real reason I'm here tonight. But before she could elaborate, Veronica materialized with Richard at her side, her face a mask of controlled fury, wrapped in a practiced society smile. Natasha, may I call you Natasha? We really should begin discussing the Sterling Capital proposal. After all, that's why you've come. Is it? Natasha took a delicate sip of her champagne. I was under the impression I was here for Walter's birthday. Of course, but surely, Mrs. Ashford. Natasha's voice sliced through Veronica's nervous chatter like a razor. Why is your father-in-law sitting with the hired help? The question landed with the force of a physical blow. The conversations around us sputtered to a halt. Even the string quartet seemed to falter. Father prefers. I prefer. I found my voice. 15 years of pent-up silence breaking free like a flood. I prefer to sit with my family. I prefer to know my granddaughter. I prefer not to be hidden away like some kind of shameful secret. Dad, you're being overly dramatic, Richard said, but his voice was thin and uncertain. Am I? When was the last time you invited me over for Sunday dinner, Richard? When was the last time Emily was allowed to come and visit me? You live in South Philadelphia, Veronica said, as if the neighborhood itself were a communicable disease. It isn't a safe place for Emily. The neighborhood where you grew up, Richard? The one where your mother taught you how to change the oil in a car and rebuild an engine? That unsafe neighborhood? That's enough. Walter Ashford Sr. had joined our little group, his commanding presence attempting to wrest back control of the situation. This is neither the time nor the place. Actually, it's the perfect time and place, Natasha interjected. You see, Mr. Ashford, Sterling Capital doesn't just perform financial due diligence. We investigate character, and what I am witnessing here tonight is telling me everything I need to know about your family's values. She raised her voice just enough to ensure that everyone in the vicinity could hear her. This man, this remarkable man, stopped in the middle of a storm to help a complete stranger. He got down on his hands and knees in the pouring rain to fix my car, ruining his suit and making himself late for your party. And how do you repay this act of kindness? You shove him in a corner. You're ashamed of him because he worked for a living, because he doesn't wear the right clothes or have the right address. No, see here. Walter started. I am not finished. Natasha's voice could have cut diamonds. You want $500 million from my firm? Let me tell you what I see. I see a family that prioritizes appearance over substance, that treats their own blood like servants, a family that is so morally bankrupt they can't even recognize genuine human decency when it is standing right in front of them. The room was utterly silent. 200 of Philadelphia's most prominent citizens were holding their breath. Furthermore, Natasha continued, pulling out her phone, my legal team has been reviewing some very interesting documents regarding Theodora Pendleton's initial investment in Ashford Industries, documents that strongly suggest her shares were never properly transferred, documents that indicate her estate, meaning you, Arthur, may still own a significant portion of this company. The color drained from Walter's face. That's impossible. Everything was handled by your lawyers, I presume. The same ones who also happen to represent your best interests? Natasha smiled, but it was not a pleasant sight. How very convenient. Maxwell Price, Theo's old lawyer, stepped forward from the crowd. I hadn't even noticed he had been listening. I attempted to contact Mr. Pendleton regarding this matter on several occasions over the years. Curiously, my messages never seemed to reach him. Because we were protecting him, Veronica said desperately. He was grieving. The paperwork was all very complicated. Protecting him? Natasha let out a short, humorless laugh. Or were you protecting yourselves from the possibility that a bookbinder from South Philly might own a larger stake in Ashford Industries than you do? She turned to me, her voice softening. Arthur, I believe it's time you knew the truth. Your wife didn't just invest in Ashford Industries. According to the original partnership agreement, she owned 51%. The champagne glass slipped from my numb fingers, shattering on the marble floor, much like my entire understanding of the last 15 years of my life. The sound of the shattered champagne glass seemed to rouse everyone from their stunned silence. A server hurried forward to clean up the mess, but Natasha held up a hand, stopping him. Leave it, she commanded. Let everyone see what happens when you tell a man the truth about his stolen inheritance. This is utterly preposterous. Walter sputtered, his face now a mottled purple, a mixture of rage and fear. Theodora Pendleton was bought out in 1982. I have the paperwork. Forged paperwork, Maxwell Price interrupted, stepping fully into our circle. I've been holding on to the original documents for 15 years, just waiting for an opportunity to give them to Arthur. Every single time I tried to approach him, someone from your family intervened. He produced a leather portfolio from inside his jacket. The authentic papers, Mr. Pendleton. Notarized, witnessed, and filed with the Delaware Secretary of State. Your wife never sold her shares. She couldn't have. The partnership agreement stipulated that both spouses' signatures were required for any transfer of shares over 25%. My legs felt as if they were about to give out from under me. Natasha gently guided me to a chair, not at the servants' table, but at the main table, right at the center of the entire affair. You're lying. Veronica's voice had become shrill. This is some kind of a shakedown. Veronica, Richard said quietly. and something in his tone made everyone turn to look at him. Stop. What? Just stop. My son looked older in that moment, weary. I knew something wasn't right when when Walter had me sign those papers after Theo died. Papers concerning Dad's pension. You told me it was to help him, but he never saw a single cent of that money, did he? Richard, you don't understand. I understand that you've been lying to me for 15 years, that you made me an accomplice in stealing from my own father. Emily broke free from her nanny once again and ran to me. This time, no one dared to stop her. She climbed onto my lap, and I held her close, breathing in her innocent scent while the world around us went up in flames. Grandpa, why is everyone so upset? Sometimes, sweetheart, the truth makes people feel very uncomfortable. Natasha addressed the entire room, her voice carrying to every corner. Ladies and gentlemen, you are bearing witness to something truly remarkable. The unmasking of one of Philadelphia's greatest financial frauds. For 15 years, the Ashford family fortune has been built upon stolen money. Arthur Pendleton isn't just Richard's embarrassing father. He is the majority owner of Ashford Industries. The room erupted into a cacophony of gasps and whispers. Cell phones materialized. Pictures were being taken. Veronica looked as though she was about to faint. William grabbed the back of a chair to steady himself. "This can't be legal," he gasped. "The statute of limitations does not apply to cases of ongoing fraud," Natasha said smoothly. "Every dividend you've paid yourself, every corporate decision made without Arthur's consent, every year you've filed fraudulent corporate documents, it's all actionable." She turned her attention back to me. "Arthur, you have choices. You can pursue criminal charges. You can demand 15 years of back dividends, which, by my rough calculation, would be in the neighborhood of $40 million. You can take your rightful place as the majority shareholder. $40 million. The number didn't even sound real. I had been forced to choose between buying groceries and paying my electric bill while I was sitting on $40 million. Or, Natasha continued, you can choose to negotiate, but this time from a position of power. Veronica fell to her knees beside my chair, her designer gown pooling on the floor around her. "Father, please, think of Emily. Think of your son. We're family." "Family?" The word tasted like poison. "You made me eat with the staff at my own granddaughter's birthday party. You told me that my very existence was an embarrassment to you. That's not family, Veronica. That's cruelty." "I'm sorry," she sobbed. And for the first time since I had met her, I thought she might actually be sincere. "I was wrong. We'll make it right. Anything you want." "What I want?" I stood up, still holding Emily, feeling taller and stronger than I had in 15 years. "I want Sunday dinners with my granddaughter. I want to teach her about her grandmother, the woman who built something incredible from nothing with her own 2 hands. I want my son to remember who he was before you convinced him that he should be ashamed of where he came from." I looked around the room at all the faces of the people who had dismissed me, who had looked right through me as if I were invisible. "And I want an apology, a real one. Not for what you did to me. I'm an old man. I can take it. But for what you tried to do to Emily, for trying to teach her that a person's worth is measured by the size of their bank account instead of the content of their character. Anything, Arthur. Anything you want, my boy." "No." I turned to face him. "Not anything I want. Everything I am owed. Maxwell, I want you to handle this. A full audit, a complete accounting. And Natasha," I looked at the woman who had single-handedly changed my life. "Sterling Capital can have their $500 million deal, but you'll be working with me, not with them." The king had been overthrown. The servants' table had become the seat of power, and somewhere I could have sworn I heard Theo laughing. "One more thing," I said, looking directly at Veronica. "That old gray suit you always made fun of, the one from Cousin Sylvia's wedding. Theo bought that for me with her last Christmas bonus. She said I looked like a king in it. Turns out, she was right." Emily hugged me tighter. "You are a king, Grandpa. My king." And for the first time in 15 years, I believed it. Standing there with my granddaughter in my arms and my entire world turned upside down, I had a choice. 15 years of pain, of humiliation, of being made to feel worthless. I could have destroyed them. Every legal right, every dollar owed, every criminal charge possible. The man they had treated like nothing now held everything. What would you do if the people who had crushed your spirit for years suddenly needed your mercy? Would you give it, or would you take your revenge? I looked at Richard's face, my son, lost somewhere between the boy I raised and the man Veronica created. I looked at Emily, innocent in all this, and I made my decision. Comment below with what you think I should have done, and keep watching to see what I actually did. Maxwell Price opened his leather portfolio with the reverence of a priest handling sacred texts. The room remained frozen in time. 200 of Philadelphia's elite were watching a bookbinder's lawyer systematically dismantle their understanding of power. "There's more," Maxwell said, his voice carrying across the silent ballroom. "Theodora Pendleton didn't just own 1% of Ashford Industries. She also left a second will, one that Walter Ashford personally witnessed and then deliberately concealed." The color drained from Walter's face so quickly I thought he might be having a heart attack. "That's a lie." "Is it?" Maxwell produced a yellow document. "Your signature is right here, Mr. Ashford. December 15th, 2008, 3 months before Theodora died. You visited her in the hospital. Do you remember? You promised her you would take care of Arthur." "Dad?" Richard's voice cracked. "You saw Theo before she died? You told me you were in Tokyo on business." Walter's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Maxwell continued reading. "In the event of my death, all shares, holdings, and interests in Ashford Industries are to be held in trust for my husband, Arthur Pendleton, with full voting rights and dividend payments. Upon his death, said shares will pass to our son, Robert Pendleton." He paused for dramatic effect. "Not Robert Ashford." Theodora never acknowledged the name change. Veronica had gone silent, her mind racing, trying to find some angle, some escape route. Furthermore, Maxwell read, "If any attempt is made to deprive Arthur of his rightful inheritance, if any coercion or fraud is perpetrated against him, all shares will revert immediately to the Theodora Pendleton Foundation for Vocational Education, a charity established to support the children of blue-collar workers." The trap Theo had set from her deathbed was nothing short of brilliant. Even as she was dying, even knowing Walter's true nature, she had found a way to protect me. "That foundation doesn't exist," Walter said desperately. "It does now," Natasha interjected. "I had it incorporated this afternoon, after Maxwell contacted my office. The paperwork was officially filed at 3:47 p.m. Arthur is the sole trustee." "But Dad," Richard interrupted, his confusion evident in his voice, "if Mom owned 1%, why were we never wealthy? Why did we live paycheck to paycheck?" Maxwell answered before I could. "Because in 1975, Ashford Industries was just 2 ambitious young people with a dream. Your mother's investment was $50,000 from the sale of her father's house. The company barely turned a profit for years. Theodora never took dividends. She reinvested everything back into the company, or lived off the income from her auto shop. The real growth came after 2009, Natasha added. After Theodora passed away, that's when Ashford Industries exploded. The riverfront development, the casino contracts, the state building projects. The 51% that was worth maybe $200,000 when Theo died is now valued at over $200 million. And they never told us. Richard's voice was hollow. Dad, you've been living in poverty while sitting on a $200 million fortune. You planned this? Veronica turned on me, her eyes wild. You've been planning this all along? No, I said simply. I've been binding books and missing my granddaughter. But Theo knew what you were, all of you. She knew that if she died, you would try to steal from me. So she made sure that you would eventually hang yourselves with your own greed. The original will, Maxwell continued, also contained a personal letter. May I, Arthur? I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Maxwell's voice softened as he read Theo's words. My dearest Artie, if you are hearing this, it means they have finally shown their true colors. I am so sorry I couldn't be there to protect you myself. But I knew Maxwell would find a way. Don't let them make you small, my love. You were always the strongest one of us all. Take what is rightfully yours, not for revenge, but for justice. And always remember, you are worth more than all their money combined. All my love, Theo. I was crying now, and I didn't care who saw. Emily gently patted my cheek with her small hand. Don't cry, Grandpa. These are good tears, my sweet. So, what happens now? Walter asked, his voice utterly defeated. Now? I stood up, still holding Emily in my arms. Now you have a choice. We can do this the hard way. Criminal charges for fraud. A forensic accounting of 15 years of stolen dividends. Public humiliation in every newspaper from here to New York. Or what? Victoria's voice was barely a whisper. Or we do this my way, the right way, the way Theo would have wanted. I gently set Emily down and walked to the center of the room, addressing everyone present. 15 years ago, I lost my wife. But I didn't just lose her. I lost my son to shame, my dignity to snobbery, my place in my own family to greed. You, I looked at Walter and Veronica, didn't just steal money from me. You stole years that I can never get back, years of Emily's life that I missed. But Theo taught me something important, she said. The best revenge against people who think you're nothing is to become something they never expected. So, here is what is going to happen. I turned to Richard. You are going to remember who you are. Theodora Pendleton's son. A man who knows the value of honest work. You are going to stop being ashamed of where you came from. To Veronica, you are going to learn what it means to earn something instead of just taking it. 500 hours of community service at the South Philadelphia Women's Shelter. Real work, not just writing checks. To Walter, you are going to retire, effective immediately. The board of directors will be restructured with me as the majority shareholder. And if we refuse? Walter asked. Then Maxwell files the criminal complaint he's been meticulously drafting for the last 15 years. Delaware has no statute of limitations on felony fraud over $1 million. You've stolen $40 million. The math was simple. The choice was obvious. But know this, I said, my voice carrying to every corner of the room. I'm not doing this for revenge. I'm doing it for Emily. So she grows up knowing that money isn't everything. That kindness matters more than social class. That her grandfather might be a simple bookbinder, but he owns an empire, and that her grandmother. I touched the papers Maxwell was holding, loved us enough to protect us, even from beyond the grave. The ballroom was silent, except for Emily's small voice. Grandpa's a superhero. From the mouths of babes, as Theo used to say. The silence that followed my ultimatum was so absolute. I could hear the catering staff in the kitchen, still preparing food for a party that had transformed into a day of reckoning. Then Veronica did something I had never seen her do before. She laughed. Not her usual delicate society laugh, but something raw and bitter. "You think you've won?" She stood up, her expensive dress now wrinkled, her perfect makeup streaked with tears. "You think you can just waltz in here and take everything away from us? I'm not taking anything, Veronica. I'm reclaiming what was already mine." "Yours?" Her voice rose to a shriek. "You know what was yours? A dusty bookshop, a 2-room apartment, and a wife who died broke. We gave you more than you ever deserved. Veronica, stop it." Richard's voice cut through her tirade. He walked over to me, and for the first time in years, I saw my boy, not Walter's protégé, not Veronica's husband, but Theo's son. "Dad, I'm sorry. I am so sorry." His voice broke. I knew something was wrong. Deep down, I knew it. But it was easier to believe your lies than to face what we had done to you. "Richard, don't you dare," Veronica started. "No." He turned on her, and I saw Theo's strength in his posture. "No more. You made me ashamed of my own mother. A woman who built something from nothing. A woman who taught me that integrity is more important than income. You made me change my name because Pendleton wasn't prestigious enough for you." He looked at the assembled crowd, then back at me. "I want to be Richard Pendleton again, if you'll have me." "Oh, Richard." I reached up and touched his face. "You were always Richard Pendleton. You just forgot for a little while." "This is all very touching," Walter said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "But legally, you're finished," Natasha interrupted. "I've been recording this entire conversation. Every admission of fraud, every confession of theft. My legal team is already preparing the necessary documentation." She held up her phone, showing a recording app that was still running. "Pennsylvania is a 2-party consent state for private conversations, but this is a public gathering with over 200 witnesses. Every word you've said is admissible in a court of law." Walter staggered to a nearby chair, the king of Philadelphia real estate, reduced to a frightened old man who had built his empire on a foundation of lies. "There's something else," Maxwell said, pulling one final document from his portfolio. "Theodora left a provision specifically for Emily." Emily perked up at the sound of her name. "For me? Your grandmother never got to meet you, sweetheart," I told her. "But she loved you anyway. She set aside something special, just for you." Maxwell read from the document. "For my future grandchildren, should I not live to meet them, an education trust is to be managed by my husband Arthur, with one condition. They must spend one summer working a real job retail, food service, manual labor. They must learn what their parents might forget, that every person who works for a living deserves our respect." "That's manipulation," Veronica spat. "That's wisdom," I corrected her. "Theo wanted her grandchildren to understand what we understood, that there is dignity in all honest work." Emily tugged on my sleeve. "Grandpa, does this mean I can work at your bookbinding shop?" "If you want to, sweetheart." "I do. Can I start tomorrow?" Even Veronica's heart of stone seemed to crack at her daughter's unbridled enthusiasm. "Please, Dad," Richard said quietly, "give us a chance. Let us try to earn your forgiveness." I looked around the room at the high society people who had ignored me, at the staff who had shown me kindness, at Natasha, who had changed everything, at Maxwell, who had waited 15 long years to deliver justice. "All right," I said. "Here are my terms. They are non-negotiable. I counted them off on my fingers. 1. A full forensic audit of the last 15 years. Every single penny accounted for. 2. The $40 million in stolen dividends goes directly to the Theodora Pendleton Foundation. 3. I take my rightful place as majority shareholder, with Natasha Sterling as my personal advisor. 4. Sunday dinners every week at my apartment in South Philly. You'll eat my pot roast, and you'll like it. Your apartment? Veronica looked horrified. My apartment, where Richard grew up, where Theo lived, where real life happens. 5. I continued. Family therapy for all of us, even Emily, so she can understand what a healthy family looks like. 6. Veronica completes her community service and learns what real struggle looks like. 7. Walter retires and makes a public statement acknowledging the fraud. And if we agree to all of that, Richard asked, then we start over, not as the family you tried to create, all surface and no substance, but as the family Theo would have wanted, complicated, imperfect, but honest. I can't, Walter said. The shame, the shame. I walked over to him. You want to talk about shame? Try being hidden away at your own granddaughter's birthday party. Try being told that you are an embarrassment. Try watching your own son pretend you don't exist. That's shame, Walter. What you're feeling right now, those are just consequences. Veronica stood up slowly. If I do this, the community service, the therapy, all of it, you'll let Richard remain in the business? Richard can earn his place, just like everyone else, but he'll do it as Richard Pendleton, not as your puppet. She looked at her daughter, at her husband, at the ruins of her perfect world. Then, I agree. Veronica, Walter started. It's over, Dad, she said quietly. We lost the moment we decided Arthur was worthless. We just didn't know it yet. One by one, they all agreed. And as they did, I felt Theo's presence beside me, finally at peace. 3 months later, I stood in the boardroom of Ashford Industries, my boardroom now looking out at the Philadelphia skyline. The same view Walter had lorded over for decades, but it looked different from where I was standing. I could see South Philly in the distance, the neighborhoods where real people lived real lives. The quarterly reports. Mr. Pendleton, my assistant. Yes, I had an assistant now handed me a folder. Thank you, Martin. It was the same Martin who had been the Wentworth's driver, who had sat with me at the servants' table that night. I had hired him as my executive assistant during my first week. He knew all of everyone's secrets, and more importantly, he knew what it felt like to be invisible. Your son is here for the meeting, he said, and Ms. Sterling. Send them in. Richard entered first, Richard Pendleton again, legally and proudly. He had lost some weight and gained a few gray hairs, but his eyes were clear in a way they hadn't been in years. Hi, Dad. Hello, son. Natalie followed, as elegant as ever, but warmer now, more of a friend than just an advisor. Arthur, the foundation's numbers are extraordinary. $40 million, properly invested, will send hundreds of kids to trade schools and colleges. Theo would have loved that, I said, touching the photo on my desk. Theo and me on our wedding day, both of us young and fearless. How's Veronica? I asked Richard. She's trying. Yesterday at the shelter, she actually served food instead of just organizing it. She said one of the women there reminded her of what her life might have been like if things had gone differently. We were quiet for a moment, absorbing that. She wants to know if she can come to Sunday dinner this week, Richard added. She's always been welcome. She just had to ask. A knock at the door interrupted us. Martin poked his head in. Mr. Pendleton, Emily's here with her art project. Send her in. Emily burst through the door like a ray of sunshine. carrying a large poster board covered in photos and drawings. "Grandpa, I finished it." The project was titled My Hero in glittery letters. There were pictures of me at the bookbinding shop, at a board meeting, teaching her how to arrange flowers in a vase. But in the center was a drawing, two stick figures working on a car. "That's Grandma Theo teaching you about engines," she explained. "Even though I never met her, she's my hero too, because she protected us." I pulled her into a hug, breathing in that same familiar strawberry shampoo scent, but now it was mixed with the smell of old paper from helping out at my shop. "Grandpa, are you crying again?" "Good tears, my sweet, always good tears." The board meeting, Natasha reminded us gently. "Right." I straightened up, keeping Emily's hand in mine. "Let's go make some decisions about our company." "Our company?" Robert asked. "Our company, the Pendleton, Ashford Group. Theo's name goes first. She earned it." As we walked to the boardroom, Emily skipping happily beside me, I thought about the journey from that servant's table to this very moment. Walter had retired quietly, his empire reduced to a comfortable pension that I had personally approved. I wasn't cruel, just fair. Victoria was halfway through her community service, slowly learning that a person's worth isn't measured in dollars. The boardroom was full of investors, partners, and employees. As I took my seat at the head of the table, with Emily on my lap drawing flowers on my legal pad, no one questioned it. The bookbinder from South Philly belonged here. He had always belonged here. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, "let's talk about the future. The Theodora Pendleton Foundation has identified 3 vocational schools in need of funding. I propose that we match every dollar donated by our employees." "That could cost millions," one of the board members pointed out. "Then we had better make sure we earn millions," I replied. Any other questions? There weren't any. After the meeting, as the sun began to set over Philadelphia, I stood in my office with Emily, Richard, and Natasha. Martin brought in coffee and juice, serving us with the dignity that every worker deserves. "You know what Theo used to say?" I said, looking at her photo. She said, "The best revenge against people who think you're nothing is to become something they never expected." "What did you become, Grandpa?" Emily asked. I thought about it for a moment. "Myself, sweetheart. I became myself." "I like yourself," she said, returning to her drawing. "You know what? So do I." And for the first time in 15 years, I meant it. I was Arthur Pendleton. Father, grandfather, majority shareholder, bookbinder. I was all of those things. None of it was diminished by the other parts. Theo had been right all along. I was worth more than all their money combined. 6 months after that fateful birthday party, I stood in my South Philadelphia apartment, setting the table for Sunday dinner. The same apartment Veronica had once deemed unsafe was now filled with the sound of laughter. Real family. "Dad, let me help with that," Richard said, carrying in the pot roast. It was Theo's recipe, one she had learned from her Polish grandmother. "I've got the potatoes," Emily announced, carefully balancing the bowl. Veronica stood in the doorway, looking uncertain. She had lost that perfect, polished exterior. Her hair was in a simple ponytail, and she was wearing jeans and a sweater from Target. She looked younger, softer, more real. "I brought dessert," she said quietly, holding up a store-bought pie. "I'm still learning how to bake." "That's perfect, dear. Come on in." We sat around my small kitchen table, the same one where Richard had done his homework, where Theo had drawn up her business plans, where I had cried alone for so many years. Now it was full, crowded, messy, and alive. "Grandpa, tell the story again," Emily begged. "The one about the night everything changed." "Again? You've heard it a dozen times. Please. So I told it. But this time, with all of us adding our own parts, Richard remembered his shame. Veronica admitted her fear of never being good enough for the Ashfords. Even Emily added her confusion about why she wasn't allowed to see her grandpa. I was so stupid, Veronica said, surprising us all. I had everything, and I couldn't see it. A father-in-law who would have loved me if I had just let him. A husband who knew what real strength looked like. I threw it all away. For what? The approval of people who don't even call now that Walter is retired. We all made mistakes, I said. But we're here now. The shelter wants to offer me a job, Veronica said suddenly. Running their job training program. The pay is nothing compared to what I'm used to. But the women there, they remind me that I could have been one of them. One bad break, one lost job, one divorce. Are you going to take it? Richard asked. I think so. If Dad thinks it's a good idea. It was the first time she had called me Dad without being prompted. I think it's perfect, I said. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Natasha in New York. The foundation just funded its 100th student. Theo would be proud. Yes, she would. After dinner, as Veronica helped with the dishes, something the old Veronica would have rather died than do, Emily pulled out her school report. I got an A, Giaon, she announced, on my hero project. That's wonderful, sweetheart. The teacher said it was inspiring. She wants to meet you, Grandpa. She said you're proof that it's never too late to stand up for yourself. Never too late, I repeated, looking at my family, broken and mended like a piece of pottery repaired with gold. More beautiful for having been shattered. Later that night, after everyone had gone home, I sat alone with Theo's photo. The apartment was quiet, but it was a good quiet. Not the silence of loneliness, but the peace that comes after a day well lived. We did it, Theo, I whispered. Not the way we planned, but we did it. I thought about the man I had been just a year ago, invisible, forgotten, accepting crumbs and trying to convince myself it was a feast. That man was gone, replaced by someone who knew his worth wasn't in his bank account or his address, but in his heart, his choices, his refusal to be made small. Tomorrow, I'd go to the bookbinding shop for a few hours before heading to the office. I'd keep one foot in each world, because they were both me. The bookbinder and the CEO. The father-in-law they had hidden away, and the man who had brought them to their knees with kindness and truth. Emily's drawing was still on my refrigerator. Me as a superhero, but I wasn't a superhero. I was just a man who had finally learned the most important lesson of all. Respect isn't given, it's demanded. And sometimes the universe conspires to help you demand it. Theo always said I was worth more than all their money combined. It turns out she was wrong. I was worth so much more than that. So, that's my story. From the man hidden at the servant's table to the one who owns the whole damn building. Not through luck or magic, but because I finally stopped allowing others to define my worth. If you have ever been made to feel small, please remember this. Your value isn't determined by their opinion of you. It's in your heart, your choices, and your refusal to accept anything less than you deserve. Like and subscribe if this story touched you. Share it with someone who needs to be reminded that it's never too late to demand respect. What would you have done in my place? Tell me in the comments below. And remember, you are worth more than all their money combined.